It was supposed to be perfect. Our first wedding anniversary. I had spent weeks planning it, picking the right restaurant, selecting a beautiful dress, even trying to learn the perfect way to say I love you without sounding too rehearsed. I wanted this day to be about us, the beginning of forever, a celebration of everything we had built together in the past year. My husband, Daniel, had always been charming, attentive, loving. He swept me off my feet when we first met. He had this way of making everything feel easy, like life was just better when he was around. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew the man I married. I was wrong. It all started when we arrived at the restaurant. Daniel was already there, waiting by the candlelit table. His smile was wide, and his eyes sparkled with affection, as if he was just as excited as I was. I sat down, smiling at him, my heart already racing with happiness. "You look beautiful," he said, leaning in to kiss me. His lips brushed mine lightly, and everything felt right. The evening started off wonderfully. The food was exquisite, the wine perfect, and we shared stories and laughter like we always did. But something felt off. At some point I noticed his phone buzzed multiple times, and he excused himself to answer a call. I didn't think much of it at first. It was his business after all, but the call seemed to last longer than usual. When he returned, he seemed a little distracted, his smile still present, but it didn't reach his eyes. I brushed it off. It was our night. Nothing was going to ruin it. At least I thought so. As dessert arrived and the atmosphere felt even more romantic, my sister-in-law, Rebecca, approached our table. I had invited her to join us later in the evening for drinks, but she had arrived earlier. "Rebecca," I said, smiling. "What a surprise. You didn't need to join us so soon, I thought." Rebecca's face was pale. Her usual confidence seemed to have melted away. She stood there, hesitant, before she finally said, "I need to talk to you. Now, Amanda, it's about Daniel." I furrowed my brow. What was she talking about? "Rebecca, what's going on? This isn't the time." She cut me off, her voice shaky. "It's important. Please, come outside. I don't know how to say this." I glanced at Daniel, but he seemed oblivious, still smiling at his dessert, unaware of what was happening. I didn't want to ruin the evening, but I couldn't ignore the urgency in Rebecca's voice. I excused myself and followed her outside. Outside, Rebecca took a deep breath before speaking. "Daniel's been hiding something from you, Amanda," she said, her eyes darting nervously around the street. I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" Rebecca hesitated, and then the words spilled out. "He's marrying Katie, his best friend. They've been seeing each other behind your back for months. I didn't know how to tell you, but I couldn't let you stay in the dark. They're getting married tomorrow." I stood there, completely frozen, the words ringing in my ears, but my brain couldn't process them. What? I stammered. "You're joking. This can't be true. Daniel would never—" "He's been planning it for a while. I didn't know until recently, but I had to tell you, Amanda. I couldn't watch you stay married to someone who's been lying to you." I could feel the world around me spinning. The cold night air stung my skin, but all I could feel was a hollow emptiness inside me, like everything I had ever known was crumbling. How could Daniel do this to me? How could I have missed something so monumental? Rebecca's face softened. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to be the one to tell you." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was shattered, and my body felt like it was made of glass, about to shatter at any moment. I went back inside, my mind a fog of confusion and rage. Daniel was still there, blissfully unaware of the storm that had just torn through our lives. I walked up to him, my hands trembling. He looked up, smiling. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice light, as if nothing had happened. I opened my mouth, but no words came out at first. The shock was still too heavy. The anger was too new. "Daniel," I finally managed to say, my voice shaking. "I know." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me," I said. "I know about you and Katie. I know you've been planning your wedding behind my back." His eyes widened and his smile faltered. For the first time, I saw him as something different, something foreign. "Amanda, please," he said, trying to reach out to me. "It's not what you think. You don't understand. This wasn't supposed to—" "Wasn't supposed to?" I interrupted, feeling tears threatening to fall. "You've been lying to me this whole time, and you think I don't understand?" I stood up, feeling the weight of everything come crashing down on me. "You've been planning a life with someone else, Daniel, behind my back, and you think we can fix this with a sorry?" That was when the tears came. The floodgates opened, and I couldn't stop crying. I didn't even care about the people around me. I didn't care about the fancy restaurant or the anniversary that was supposed to be mine. It wasn't real. None of it was real. I had been living a lie. I left the restaurant in a haze. My heart was broken. My body felt like it was carrying a weight I couldn't escape. I called a cab, and as I sat there in the back seat, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. Daniel wasn't the man I thought he was, and I wasn't the woman I thought I was either. But that night I knew I had to make a choice. I had to take control of my life again. I didn't know what that would look like, but I wasn't going to let anyone steal my happiness, my self-worth, or my future. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt the spark of something within me. Hope. Hope for something better. And that was a start. I spent the next few days in a haze. I don't know how to describe it. Everything felt muffled, like I was walking through a fog I couldn't escape. My heart was broken, my trust shattered, and the worst part, I had no idea how to fix it. I didn't want to talk to anyone, but I knew I had to. I needed to process it. But the thought of facing anyone, especially Daniel, felt like a betrayal to myself. I locked myself in my apartment, turning off my phone and ignoring the flood of messages from friends and family. The only thing that made sense was the silence. But even silence has a way of screaming at you. On the fourth day, I finally forced myself to leave the apartment. I didn't want to, but I knew I couldn't stay in the void forever. I needed to face the world again, even if it meant facing the anger and the questions that had been swirling in my mind. I went for a walk through the city, letting the crisp air and bustling streets try to shake off the numbness that had overtaken me. Every corner I turned, I found myself thinking of Daniel, of the life we had built, of the lies he had told me. It felt like the city was mocking me, as though the whole world knew and I was the last to find out. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was okay. The first time I saw him after everything happened, I was sitting in a cafe sipping coffee when he walked in. His presence hit me like a freight train. He didn't see me at first, but I saw him, standing there, looking completely lost, as if he didn't know where he was or what to do next. And for a moment, I almost felt bad for him. But then the anger came flooding back, fierce and unforgiving. He spotted me, and then he walked over cautiously. "Can we talk?" His voice was hoarse, desperate. I shook my head. "No, Daniel, you don't get to talk to me." He sat down anyway, as if I hadn't spoken at all. "I know I've hurt you. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try." I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was bitter. "Fix this? How, Daniel? How do you fix years of lies?" He flinched at my words, but I didn't care. "I'm not the same person I was when I married you," I said, my voice growing steadier, firmer. "And I don't think you are either. The man I married didn't betray me." He looked at me with pain in his eyes. "Amanda, please. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen." But his words fell flat, and for the first time in weeks, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for him to fix anything anymore. I was fixing myself. I didn't let him speak again. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest, but it wasn't from fear. It was from strength. "You made your choice, Daniel," I said, the finality in my words heavy. "And so have I." I walked out of that cafe knowing I had made the right decision. The hardest part wasn't walking away from him. It was walking away from the life I thought I knew. The life I had invested my heart and soul into for years. But sometimes, the only way to move forward is to leave behind everything that's holding you back. And that's exactly what I was doing. The next few weeks were difficult. I met with a lawyer. I filed for separation. I made sure everything was in my name, everything that was ours as a couple, everything I had worked for. The process was emotionally draining, but it was also empowering. I was taking control. I was making sure that I wasn't just a victim in this story. I was reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. And with every step I took, I felt the weight lifting. I didn't expect the phone call from Rebecca. She had been silent for days after the confrontation at the restaurant. I figured she was avoiding me, as anyone in her position probably would. But when I answered the phone, her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I know you hate me right now," she said, "but I need to say something." I didn't say anything, just listened. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to be the one who told you about Daniel. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I know you deserve the truth, and I'm sorry it hurt you." I let her words sink in. She wasn't excusing her role in everything, and I appreciated that. "I'm just trying to fix the mess I made," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "If you ever want to talk, if you ever need a friend, I'm here." For a second, I felt something shift inside of me. Maybe it was the realization that people can mess up, can fail, but still try to make things right. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you," I said honestly, "but I appreciate you saying that." Rebecca hesitated, then said, "I understand." The call ended shortly after, and as I hung up, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I just felt tired. Tired of carrying the weight of betrayal. Tired of living in the past. I spent more time with my friends and family. People who cared for me, who saw me for who I truly was, not for the image I had once built with Daniel. I laughed more. I cried, but not from pain. I cried from the relief of finally letting go. The most important part of my healing wasn't just the legal separation or the phone call from Rebecca. It was the quiet moments when I realized I was still me, still strong, still worthy of love. But this time, I wasn't going to settle for someone else's version of what I should be. I was building my own future, and it was going to be more than I ever thought possible. It's strange how a broken heart can feel like both the end and the beginning of something new. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by someone else's expectations. For the first time, I was finally free to be me, whoever that was. The days after I filed for separation were a blur of legal meetings, phone calls with friends who tried to comfort me, and hours spent staring at the empty spaces where Daniel's things used to be. I took it one day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. But it wasn't the legal battles that broke me. It wasn't the emptiness of the apartment. It was the silence. For so long, I had lived in a constant noise, whether it was from my busy life with Daniel or from the expectations of what our marriage should look like. But now there was nothing but the quiet hum of my thoughts. And in that silence, I realized something important. I had spent years trying to fit into a life that wasn't mine. I had given up pieces of myself to make things work, to make others happy. But in doing that, I lost track of who I truly was. I spent the first few weeks healing in the only way I knew how, through small steps. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had been there before I met Daniel, the ones who knew me without the layers of who I was supposed to be. I visited my sister Clara in the city. We had always been close, but I had been so wrapped up in my relationship with Daniel that I hadn't made time for her in years. Over the weekend, we went to the beach, just like we did when we were teenagers. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the feel of the sand beneath my feet. It was like I could breathe again. "You're going to be okay," Clara told me as we sat on the beach at sunset, the sky streaked with pink and orange. "I don't feel okay," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. "That's because you're not okay yet," she replied. "And that's okay, but you will be. Just give yourself the space to heal." And for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. I started to reclaim the things I had loved before I got married. I picked up my old sketchbook again, something I hadn't touched since before Daniel and I even met. Drawing was something that always brought me peace, but somewhere along the way, I had let it slip into the background. I also started running again, not for any reason other than the fact that it made me feel free. It gave me the chance to clear my head, to escape the weight of everything that had happened. One morning, while running through the park, I felt something inside me shift. I wasn't running away from anything anymore. I wasn't running because I had to. I was running because I could. But healing doesn't happen in a straight line. There were days when I'd feel good, like I was finally on the right path, like I was rediscovering who I was. And then there were days when I felt like I couldn't go on. I had dreams about Daniel. In those dreams, he was still the man I married, still the man who told me he loved me, still the man I thought I could trust. But then I'd wake up, and the reality would come rushing back. And on those days, I had to remind myself that it was okay to feel broken. It was okay to cry. It was okay to miss the parts of my old life that I couldn't get back. Then one day I bumped into Evan, a guy I used to know in college. He was a photographer, the kind of person who had this effortless cool about him. I hadn't seen him in years, but we recognized each other immediately. We chatted for a while, catching up on life. I told him about my separation from Daniel, and he listened patiently. He didn't offer any empty words of comfort. He just listened. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. It was nothing more than a brief conversation, but something in me shifted. I realized that I had spent so much of my life looking for validation from other people, trying to be the person others wanted me to be, that I had forgotten what it meant to just be. Evan and I ended up getting coffee the next week, and then again the week after that. We spent hours talking about everything and nothing, art, life, dreams, regrets. It was easy, like breathing. We didn't rush into anything, and I didn't need him to fix me. He just made me realize that I was allowed to exist outside of my pain, outside of my past. Through all of this, I slowly came to understand one thing. I didn't need someone else to complete me. I was enough. I had always been enough. It wasn't about fixing myself or finding someone to fix me. It was about standing on my own 2 feet, being kind to myself, and learning how to live without fear. I still had moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I had made the right choices. But they were fewer now. One evening, as I was sitting on my balcony watching the sun set over the city, I realized something important. I had survived. I had survived the betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak, and I was still standing. I was still here, living and breathing. And that was enough. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could face the future with a sense of calm. I didn't need to have all the answers. I just needed to keep moving forward, and I would. The healing process didn't happen overnight, but I wasn't afraid of the journey anymore. I had learned how to trust myself again, how to stand up for myself, and I was finally ready to embrace the next chapter of my life, the one that would be written on my terms. It was on a quiet Saturday afternoon that I realized something. I was at a local farmer's market, the sun shining brightly over the rows of fruits and vegetables. The air smelled like fresh produce, and the streets were filled with people, happy people, walking around with baskets of food, exchanging stories, laughter, and smiles. It was simple, ordinary. But there was a peace about it that made me pause. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about the past. I wasn't analyzing every moment, every mistake, every regret. I wasn't looking over my shoulder wondering if I had made the right choices. I was simply present. And in that moment, I realized that I was free. In the months following my separation from Daniel, life began to fall into a new rhythm. I moved into a new apartment, a place that felt like a fresh start. It wasn't much, just a small, cozy space with a view of the city. But it was mine. It was where I could breathe, create, and rebuild. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. I took up yoga. I joined a book club. I reconnected with old friends, and I made new ones. People who didn't know me as Daniel's wife. People who only knew me as Leighton. Just me, with no strings attached, no past hanging over my head. I wasn't looking for validation from anyone. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just living. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like enough. I had a chance encounter with Evan one weekend at an art exhibit. He was there, standing in front of a large, abstract painting, his eyes focused, taking in every detail. I walked over to him, feeling the familiar spark of connection. "Hey, stranger," I said with a smile. He turned to face me and smiled back. "Hey, Leighton. Fancy seeing you here." We talked for hours that day. About art, about life, about everything we had experienced since we last saw each other. It was easy, comfortable. He had become a part of my life, but not in a way that weighed me down. He was someone who understood me without trying to fix me. Someone who loved me, not for what I had been, but for who I was becoming. We didn't rush into anything. There was no pressure. We just enjoyed each other's company, savoring the quiet moments and the simple joy of being together. And one evening, as we sat on the rooftop of my apartment, watching the sunset together, he turned to me and said, "You know, I think you've been amazing through all of this. The way you've handled everything, you're stronger than you think." I smiled softly, touched by his words. I didn't feel strong at first, but I'm getting there. He reached out and took my hand. "You've always been strong, Leighton. I'm just glad you're starting to see it." I had spent so long looking for validation in others, thinking that I needed someone to complete me. But the truth was, I had always been whole. I was the one who needed to see my own worth. And with each passing day, I felt more confident in who I was. I learned how to trust myself again. I learned how to love myself without needing anyone else to do it for me. I had finally found peace. A year later, as I stood on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city come alive with the glow of the setting sun, I thought about everything I had gone through, the pain, the heartache, the betrayal, but also the healing, the growth, the strength I had gained. I wasn't the same person I was a year ago. I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, and I had learned to stand on my own 2 feet. I had learned that I didn't need someone else to define me. I had learned that my happiness was in my own hands. And I wasn't afraid anymore. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had my own dreams, my own passions, my own path, and I wasn't walking it alone anymore. I was walking it with myself. And that was more than enough. As the days passed, I continued to grow. I started a new job at a design firm, something I had always dreamed of doing, but had never had the courage to pursue. I made new friends. I traveled to new places. I took risks. I lived fully. And the more I embraced who I was, the more the world opened up to me. One day, I stood in front of a canvas in my apartment, brush in hand, ready to paint. I didn't know exactly what I was creating, but I knew it would be something beautiful, something uniquely mine. I didn't need to have it all figured out. I just needed to keep going, keep creating, keep living. And as I dipped my brush into the paint, I smiled, because for the first time in years, I was exactly where I needed to be.